This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hey, Cassettes, and welcome to the Season 9 premiere of the Black Case Diaries.
Hey!
Hey!
Season 9.
We're three old friends who are learning everything we can about movies and TV, and hopefully teaching you in the process. I'm Robin.
Marcy.
And I'm Adam.
As you might have seen on social media or Patreon, we have decided that this will be the last season of the BCD.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
It's true. It's not a prank.
It's not a joke this time.
No, not a joke.
We loved spending the last 5 years learning and laughing with you, but all good things must eventually come to an end. We aren't ready to drop the curtain on the BCD just yet, so we decided to spend one more year with you, talking about some of our favorite movies and shows. And for our first episode, we're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone. We didn't even plan that. That was great. Oh, man.
Yes.
Whew, that's a lot of information that I just kind of dumped there.
How you guys feeling?
Great.
In a time when television was considered lesser entertainment to film, The Twilight Zone brought the medium to new heights with its impeccable writing, high-quality set design, superb acting, and an unforgettable opening theme. So let's investigate this groundbreaking series by taking a detour through The Twilight Zone.
I love how whenever they talk about it, it's like it's referenced as a place you can go.
Yep.
And I really like thinking that somewhere out there is the Twilight Zone.
Yes, you've entered the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. And in every episode, like obviously there are some better than others, but I don't think there's any bad ones. Like they've all got something interesting to say.
Yep.
They've all got interesting stories that are like
Makes you think.
mind-bending. Yeah.
Mind-bending is a good way to describe it, because it really does. Sometimes you're like, oh, what? Sometimes you're like, I know where this is going. I can see, especially if you kind of get the hang of the show and kind of see how things turn out usually.
Right. But even then, there's a twist in there usually.
Yes.
Like, you get to another one and it's like, did not see that one coming.
And it's so classic and so serious.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a serious show, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, in order to discuss The Twilight Zone, we have to start with its creator, Rod Serling.
Rod Serling. Every single person we've asked who created The Twilight Zone, every single person said Rod Serling. Every person. And we thought it was Rod Serling as well.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
We really did.
There's
Not
no
immune
T.
from this,
Yeah, there's no T. It's Serling.
Wild.
Unbelievable.
In the show, they say it clear as day.
Yeah,
Clear
Rod
as day.
Serling.
Yeah. Serling was born December 25th, 1924 in Syracuse, New York, to his parents Sam and Esther. He grew up in a Reformed Jewish household, but they still loved and celebrated Christmas.
Even though it was his birthday.
Yes. After high school, Rod signed up to be in the Army and joined the 511th Regiment Paratroopers. He did a little flyweight boxing while overseas as well, with an impressive 17-1 winning streak.
Dang, dude.
Yeah. Yep. The one time he lost is what made it so he couldn't again. Apparently.
Bummer.
Fighting in the war is one of the things that truly drove him to write. In 1946, he attended Antioch College in Ohio. Ohio, guys!
Yay!
Ohio! Here is where he met his wife, Carolyn Kramer, and switched his studies from physical education to writing and literature. While in college, he wrote, directed, and acted in several productions for the campus radio station. Shortly after graduating, Serling got a job in Cincinnati at WLW Radio. While there, he started crafting his own stories for radio and TV programming and would send them in, receiving 40 rejection slips in the process.
Oh boy.
Yeah, yep, but he kept doing it. While at WLW, Serling was tasked with writing comedic scripts, but his real passion was drama. His very first writing credit was for Stars Over Hollywood, a radio anthology series broadcast by CBS. The episode was called Grady Everett for the People, and it aired September 13th, 1950. The origins of his most famous work, The Twilight Zone, began while he lived in Cincinnati in the early 1950s and manifested into a live anthology series called The Storm. The program aired on WKRC-TV and featured plot lines that would later become episodes of The Twilight Zone, as well as other projects by Serling, like his 1957 teleplay, Requiem for a Heavyweight.
So the Twilight Zone started in Ohio.
Yes.
Twilight Zone is Ohio.
Bam, it is Ohio. A lot of them take place in Ohio or mention Ohio.
He's a big fan of Ohio.
Yeah, some people will say that we might be in it now.
Mm-hmm. Feels like it every once in a while, doesn't it?
Sometimes.
Oh my gosh. Serling won a special Peabody Award for television writing, the first award of its kind, for Requiem for a Heavyweight. Dang.
He was super well known for writing for television before The Twilight Zone.
He found his first true success in 1955 when he wrote Patterns, a teleplay about a man that went to work at a high-powered New York corporation. His ethics are put to the test as he finds out he is there to replace an older worker that the boss is trying to make miserable, so he will be pushed out and retire. It premiered on Kraft Television Theater for NBC and was later adapted into a made-for-TV movie. From that moment on, Serling had less trouble selling his stories.
Yeah, so for anyone unfamiliar at this time, a lot of TV was live theater.
Yeah.
So it was like, you watched performances and they were broadcast, but they weren't recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the same way that radio was just done on the air, TV was the same.
Mm-hmm. Serling quickly developed a reputation as the angry young man because he was always fighting sponsors and network executives about censors. He never won, but he always went down fighting, and these fights were well documented.
Wow.
Yeah.
17-1?
Serling continued to write teleplays for Playhouse 90, a 1950s CBS drama series, but was met with constant censorship. For example, he wrote Noon on Doomsday and A Town Has Turned to Dust in response to the horrifying true-life lynching of Emmett Till. Both programs were heavily censored to the point that Serling himself said, "By the time A Town Has Turned to Dust went before the cameras, my script had turned to dust." Much of Serling's early work were teleplays written for live performances, meaning that they are lost to time. However, H. Michael Sanders, professor and department chair of media communications and technology at the University of Cincinnati, Blue Ash, has a collection of 50 scripts written by Serling for his show, The Storm.
Yes.
So even though the actual, thing is not recorded, we have the scripts.
Yeah, the script still exists with his, original handwriting on it, making the notes, and, some of those scripts became Twilight Zone episodes too. So, those are essentially the first Twilight Zone episodes, scripts.
Nice.
Amazing. As television's golden age came to a close, Serling turned his attention back to a script he had written for The Storm in the early 1950s. It was called The Time Element, and it focused on a man that traveled back in time in an attempt to warn people about the bombing of Pearl Harbor. He reworked the script, christening it with a new title, The Twilight Zone, The Time Element. CBS shelved the project because executives were unsure about showing fantasy and science fiction programming.
Yep.
They're always so hesitant to put science fiction and everything
especially at this time. Yeah. They really didn't think audiences wanted to watch that. Which is so funny because this is just before the B movie boom of the 1960s when the sci-fi B movies really they really ramped up in the 1960s and they were popular because people were going to see them. That's why they made so many of them.
They were poised so perfectly to beat everyone in the punch.
Yeah.
Makes me think about how Lucille Ball had to fight for Star Trek, right?
That's actually really funny that you say that. Yeah, keep reading.
Oh. 1 year later, it was purchased for $10,000 by a producer named Burt Granite, who worked for Westinghouse Desilu Playhouse. It aired as an episode of CBS's Desilu Playhouse on November 24th, 1958. The audience reception was overwhelmingly positive. The network hadn't received such feedback for any dramas produced that year, and CBS agreed to produce a pilot episode for The Twilight Zone.
So, the reason why I said it was interesting that you said that is Desilu Playhouse. Do you know what Desilu is?
I am unfamiliar.
Desilu was the production company owned by Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball.
Yes.
Aha.
And you see, what happened here was one of their guys was looking for scripts for their Desilu Playhouse program, and he was essentially just kind of looking for big names. He found out that a Rod Serling script was just sitting on the shelf. And he was like, absolutely not. I'll buy that for 10 grand.
Yeah. He's like, he's a great writer.
Yeah, so he bought it for 10 grand. And then Desi Arnaz had to fight to get it onto the air.
Oh my God.
Because
so they both...
Which is so
amazing.
funny, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it went on the air in such a way that Rod Serling wasn't like super amped. They had to change some stuff and you know, so he wasn't like really, really happy with it. But if that had not happened, there would be no Twilight Zone.
No.
Twilight Zone would not exist.
Wow,
so
man.
Because of him, Desi Arnaz and Burt Granit, like if it weren't for those guys, there would be no.
There it is.
Dang.
Now we're going to move on to how the show started. You had a little bit of build up, and now here it is.
Here's the show.
Woo.
When CBS asked Serling for another pilot episode of The Twilight Zone, he delivered a script that they considered to be too depressing.
It was about a dystopian society where people who are a certain age get essentially put out to pasture.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Good. His second try, an episode titled Where Is Everybody, became the first official episode of the show. In the late 1950s, networks like CBS tended to be more conservative and didn't want to show programming that was too far into the science fiction genre. This first episode steered clear of any mention of aliens or talking dolls, but instead focused solely on the effects of extreme isolation.
Yeah, it was the perfect pilot because it was science fiction drama, but
Question mark.
Yeah, but it really was just about the guy situation.
Yeah.
It really, and that's the thing, is that like they were able to kind of show what the show would be and what it would be about.
Yeah.
But they didn't introduce the stuff that made CBS all wiggly, you know? The stuff that they didn't really like, the aliens and the monsters.
The pilot episode of the show was directed by Robert Stevens, who had directed episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents and Playhouse 90. Cinematographer Joseph Lachelle had also worked on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Along with these seasoned television professionals, producers also called on one of the most prominent composers of the time, Bernard Herrmann, to write the theme. Herrmann scored films like Citizen Kane and Vertigo.
Nice.
Bernard Herrmann was a huge name, and he scored that original Twilight Zone theme that you can now hear in episodes if you watch them on DVD or streaming online.
Yeah.
With a budget of $75,000, the pilot episode was filmed over the course of 8 days on a Universal backlot. The same lot that would later see productions like Back to the Future and Gremlins.
Kind of fun to think about.
Which is pretty cool. Although most CBS executives didn't seem thrilled with the final product, CEO William Paley loved it. However, there were a few changes that needed to be made. First, CBS commissioned UPA, United Productions of America, to create a new title card for the show.
So when you watch that title card in the first season of the show, I want you to watch it, because if you look at it, it distinctly looks like UPA. Yeah, it looks like they're the studio that made Mr. Magoo.
Okay,
so if you watch it, you could see it really
their influence.
Yeah, you can see how it's a UPA title card.
Wow. The original pilot featured Cornelius Westbrook Van Voorhees, an actor who was known for the March of Time radio and news series. CBS considered other actors, even mentioning Orson Welles, but Rod Serling suggested that he do the narration himself. After a few voice tests, he proved to be the perfect person for the job.
Yeah.
Undeniably.
110%.
Undeniably, really. I
Heck
mean,
yeah.
he really enunciated things very well.
Yeah.
And just, he was, I don't know, he had this great middle ground where it felt like he was just talking to you,
Yeah.
but also it was very professional and very rehearsed.
And one thing that I love about his version of it is that you could have so easily taken it into a super overdone,
Yeah.
super dramatic kind of like, this is the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
But no, he keeps it kind of mysterious and strange and messes with you along the way. It's like this, that, on their way to the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's so good. It perfectly encompasses the mood
Yes.
of the show, and I don't think any other person could have captured it
No.
exactly how they wanted.
There was this quote I think I read in one of the books that was like, the thing was, nobody really knew what made the Twilight Zone work except for Rod Serling. Nobody really understood how the show, like the magic of the show.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was the puzzle piece really there that made it.
Yeah.
Because the ZBS executives were not fans.
Yeah.
Even of the new pilot. And the president, the CEO, was like, I like it, so we're doing it.
Nice.
Damn.
I mean, that's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
He was like, well, what I say goes. I'm the CEO. I want to make this show. I want to make it.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Good. I mean, shoot.
Yes.
The one time where the head honcho made the right
Yes.
decision.
Yeah, the right decision. Yeah.
The network signed a contract with Rod Serling's production company with a deal that he would write 80% of the show's first season. And The Twilight Zone was officially greenlit.
Yay.
Boop, boop.
The episode premiered in October of 1959 to a positive critical reception. Critics loved the story, the acting, and the set design, and they adored Rod Serling himself as the narrator. However good the reviews were, the ratings were dangerously low, and the possibility of cancellation loomed. However, the fans of the show began sending letters to the network. The mailbag for The Twilight Zone and Rod Serling were filled with thousands of letters, proving that there was an audience out there for the series. The show's sponsors decided to renew their deals, and CBS ordered more episodes after filming completed on the first season.
Yeah, so basically what you should glean from that is that if you like something, you should tell people
Yeah.
that you like it. Tell your friends,
Yes.
send in
Spread
letters
the
of
word.
support.
Yep.
So the ratings were low. And I don't know if do you guys know how like the ratings system worked?
Worked? No.
In the past, not as much.
No.
So like the ratings, very similar to today.
Okay.
Selected households were chosen, like households were chosen, and they would put something in their television
Okay.
that would monitor which channels and which shows, what times they were watching TV.
Okay.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what the Nielsen ratings are. So specific people were chosen,
Yeah.
and those people were not watching The Twilight Zone.
Gotcha.
So the ratings for the show were not high,
Yeah.
even though the show
was-
was becoming popular.
Ah.
And one of the problems with the rating system, with that rating, is that when people look at TV Guide or whatever
Yeah.
and see that the ratings are low, it's almost like they feel
It
like they
affects.
shouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
Because it makes them feel a little embarrassed, maybe, that they're watching a bad show. So,
Man.
yeah, so it's kind of like, this weird effect.
Yeah.
that have- yeah.
You can't win.
Yeah.
That specific point makes me upset
Yeah.
because when that happens today, I get upset.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
true. It's
Yep.
true.
Well, at least those people made themselves known.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
kept the show alive.
Yep. They said the mailbag alone saved the show.
Yeah, like Miracle on 34th Street.
Yes. Exactly.
Miracle on CBS is what this movie's called. In January of 1960, the Screen Producers Guild declared The Twilight Zone to be the best produced television film series of 1959. This led to even more awards, including a Hugo Award and an Emmy.
No.
The first of several.
Heck yeah.
The budget for The Twilight Zone was between $50,000 and $70,000 per episode. The money went to the incredible sets, not to mention the immense acting talent that appeared in the show. Yeah.
Yep.
Mildred Gussie and John Erman were the casting directors responsible for bringing in some of the best up-and-coming actors of the time. Names like Robert Redford, William Shatner, Julie Newmar, Carol Burnett, Cloris Leachman, and Mickey Rooney all appeared on the show.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
Dude, it's so funny when old shows and movies too do this, where they'll get some of the same people to do different things. We'll talk about him later, but William Shatner is one example of somebody who is in a couple episodes that we are going to talk about, and sold me totally fine as different people.
Several different people.
You know what I mean? It didn't. It wasn't distracting at all.
Rod Serling wrote an impressive 92 of the 156 total episodes of The Twilight Zone. He created, hosted, and was the executive producer. He discovered that he was able to find ways around the censor by masking his commentary on current events and the human experience with supernatural elements.
Hey, got him.
So smart.
He could finally tell his stories. Yes. Themes he often explored were age versus youth, sensitivity versus insensitivity, individual morality versus mob mentality, and destructive effects of prejudice. In need of other writers for the show, Serling consulted notable writers like Charles Beaumont, Richard Matheson, and Ray Bradbury. Beaumont and Matheson became regular contributing writers, delivering classic episodes like Living Doll and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Matheson wrote I Am Legend.
Wow.
If that's...
Dang, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that rings a bell now.
These were heavy-hitting sci-fi novelists. Bradbury's relationship with Serling soured after the prominent author's teleplays were often rejected, presumably because they would be too expensive to produce. According to Stuart Stanyard in his book Dimensions Beyond the Twilight Zone, Bradbury accused Serling of plagiarism and cut ties with the show. He did, however, write one episode called I Sing the Body Electric. Charles Beaumont began using ghostwriters to help him with his workload of episodes until he eventually discovered that he was suffering from early onset Alzheimer's disease.
Oh, no.
Now, I read other places that it was like it was never confirmed to be Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Some places say it was. Gotcha. I don't know if maybe they found out later, but at the time he didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just know that unfortunately he passed away. I think he was only 38 years old.
Damn.
What a shame.
Yeah. He was a mentor to George Clayton Johnson, who became the next prominent Twilight Zone writer. He would go on to write the first aired episode of Star Trek and the original Ocean's 11.
What? Nice.
Yeah, so we
Very
got
nice.
another Star Trek crossover.
Yeah.
His first original story for the show was an episode called A Penny for Your Thoughts, which is one of my favorite episodes.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I
It's
love
a very
that
good
one.
episode.
It's got the guy from Bewitched in it.
Yeah.
The season 2 premiere began with a new title sequence, and Bernard Herrmann's music was nowhere to be found. In its place was a new theme that would become one of the most recognizable pieces of music in television history. Sing it again, guys. We got... The new theme was actually 2 stock music cues written by composer Marius Constant. Music director Lud Gluskin arranged the pieces together to create the iconic theme. At the time, the American Federation of Music, the AFM, had contracts with studios like CBS, forbidding them from owning stock music libraries. This was because a lot of TV was still live at the time. In order to get around the AFM rules, Gluskin traveled to Europe and paid composers there to write and record musical cues, sending the tapes back to the U.S. Marius Constant was reportedly paid a total of $700 for his work, and CBS had all rights in perpetuity.
Dang.
Wow.
Constant didn't even know that he had written the theme for the show until years later, and he didn't receive any royalties.
Jeez.
Once the new theme existed, every repeated broadcast of the first season episodes used the new theme, effectively erasing Bernard Herrmann's theme. But Constant was never credited throughout the show's original run. Because of this, Herrmann got credited for writing the theme to the Twilight Zone.
Dang.
Yes.
Jeez.
Yikes.
So if you ever watched Twilight Zone on TV, if it was a first season episode, they played Marius Constant's music, even though originally Bernard Herrmann's music played.
Wow.
But now if you watch it on Paramount Plus, or wherever else you can find it, they put the old theme back
Correct.
Yeah.
Ones in.
in. Yeah. It was not well known that Constant wrote the music until almost exactly 20 years later, when Warner Brothers Records was preparing to release the soundtrack to The Twilight Zone, the movie. Constant finally got the credit, but no money. CBS sued Constant in January of 1984 to establish their rights to the song. They reached a settlement that ensured that Constant would have future rights to his work as long as he relinquished any claim to past owed royalties.
Wow.
Damn.
This guy is like, yo, I will pay you $200 to write me a theme.
Yeah.
And if I like it, I'll pay you $500 more.
Yeah.
He does that. Guy takes his music, turns it into one of the most iconic TV show themes
my
of all
gosh.
time. You don't even know.
Yep.
You never get credited, and you
Nope.
never get paid beyond that $700 until the
Jeez,
early
dude.
1980s.
Wow.
Buck Houghton served as producer for the first 3 seasons of the show. He helped Serling select which episodes to produce for the series. He had several criteria that each episode had to fill, with the most important ones being that the characters in the story needed to be ordinary people. The conflict had to resonate with the fears of the audience, even if the characters were facing something completely fantastical.
It such a good idea, a great point to continue with the show because it's so relatable.
Yeah.
Despite the weird and wacky things that happen.
Right. And you know, it actually reminds me of when we interviewed DJ McHale, the creator of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes.
Because I remember him saying, you know, every time he got presented a script, he would say, okay, but like, who are the kids? And what are they doing? That's what's important.
Yeah.
Like the scary things that are happening, that's secondary. We need to really care about the characters and who they are.
Yep.
And then that's when the scary stuff comes in.
Right.
And it's very similar mindset.
Yeah, because if you don't care about your characters, you're not going to feel afraid with them.
Yeah.
No.
Serling was the master storyteller, but Houghton knew what it took to get a story on the screen. He had various duties, like casting, securing filming locations, and buying scripts for episodes not written by Serling. Cinematographer George T. Clemens was part of the regular crew that contributed to the magic of the series. He shot more episodes of The Twilight Zone than any other cinematographer, and earned an Emmy for his work on the series. Houghton, Serling, and Clemens created a list of directors from popular series of the time, like The Outer Limits, Green Acres, and Playhouse 90. The list included several names, like Mitchell Eisen, Douglas Hayes, and future Goonies director Richard Donner.
Hey.
After the first 3 seasons, The Twilight Zone was starting to reach pop culture status. However, the series had no sponsors lined up for the 4th season, and CBS did not include the show in its upcoming fall lineup. With the show effectively canceled, Houghton and Serling both accepted jobs elsewhere. But CBS decided to bring the show back mid-season, and the 4th season of The Twilight Zone had to carry on without most of the team that made the first 3 seasons so successful.
Oof. Yikes.
Yeah. For its 4th season, the show dropped the from its title. Fewer episodes were ordered, and these episodes were lengthened to an hour. These changes proved to be a mistake, as the series worked best with its half-hour pacing. Serling still wrote episodes from a distance, as he was teaching in Ohio at the time. Yeah. 2 producers oversaw the 4th season. One of them was Herbert Hirschman, who designed and directed the new opening sequence. He included various props and had them seemingly float on screen. This opening is possibly the most famous of all the openings created for the show. That's the one with the door.
The door.
Yes.
The door.
Yeah.
Yep.
The door and the floating eye.
Yep.
And the window that breaks.
Yep.
I have to admit, it's my favorite opening in the series.
For sure. But I always get a little chuckle when just E = MC squared.
Yes, I know. It's so funny.
It's like, you know, of sight, blah, 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 and of mind.
Of mind.
E = MC squared.
So funny.
It's like, what does that have to do with it?
Like, they were in the room and they're like, mind. What's a good symbol for mind?
We've got
a
an eye
brain.
already.
No, they could have done a brain.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
No.
I know, that always
A
makes
formula.
me laugh. The little E = MC squared. It looks like they literally just like wrote it on a board in chalk and they just like floated it across.
my gosh.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
But it would have been very funny if just they did write it on a tiny chalkboard and
Yeah.
they just had somebody's hand kind of holding it.
Adding hands. Oh my gosh.
Twilight Zone was renewed for a 5th and final season. The show returned to its original half-hour format, but Serling admitted to feeling burnt out by the amount of writing required for the series. The final episode of the original show aired on June 19th, 1964.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
There you have it. That's the show.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're all done, right?
Yep. All right. Cut.
Done.
Not quite.
LOL.
All right. So many episodes are thought-provoking and wonderful, but we will only get to talk about a select handful out of the series. But know that there are many, many more that have influenced writers and TV and movie makers alike. So,
There's like
So
all of
many.
them are awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great episodes of this show.
yeah. Yep. First up is Time Enough at Last, which was season 1, episode 8.
A classic.
Oh, yes.
All right. So after a nuclear war, a book lover finally gets all the time in the world to read. Or does he? Burgess Meredith starred in the episode. He was a renowned actor known for playing the Penguin in 1960s Batman series, as well as Mickey in the Rocky franchise. This episode was directed by John Bram and written by Rod Serling and Lynn Venable.
So this episode, I think, is... I remember watching this as a kid, and I absolutely adored Burgess Meredith. I loved him. And I remember telling adults, like, I really like Burgess Meredith. And they'd be like, how do you even know who that is? I really was.
Were
I
you
was like,
reincarnated?
Yeah. I was like, this is such a good actor. I was so into this episode, and I loved the way he acted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this episode. It's so interesting because it's almost like 2 in 1.
Yeah.
Because you have the whole beginning of him just living his miserable kind of like everyone hates reading life.
Yep.
Except for him. Like I don't get why everyone hates it so much and hates him for doing it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm one of those guys who's like, boo reading. I like movies and games. But I wouldn't do that to somebody who does like to read. It's so strange.
I know, it's so interesting. It's such a like inflated idea.
Yeah.
You know, at the time people were like, nobody reads anymore, you know.
Yeah. And then even at home, he's just reading the newspaper and his wife is like, give me that. And it's like,
Oh my
you need to be
gosh.
having conversations with me. And it's like, clearly you don't want to have conversations either. But it's such a great episode. It has that super eerie, just
Yes.
Yeah.
heart-wrenching type ending.
Yeah.
I love the ending because it's such like a classic campfire story,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So poignant. All right. The next one we're going to talk about is Nightmare as a Child, which was season 1, episode 29. School teacher Helen Foley meets a strange little girl in her apartment building. This child soon brings back unwanted memories of when Helen was a child, and she witnessed the murder of her own mother. This episode is about repressed trauma and disassociation. It was written by Rod Serling and directed by Alvin Ganzer.
Yeah, this episode is one of those where it doesn't make you think a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm cool with that. That's
Yeah.
fine, you
Yeah,
know?
they don't all have to be that way.
I like this concept.
Yeah.
It had this very creepy feeling to it, like when the little version of her keeps singing
Yeah.
"Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star."
Yeah, children singing.
It's the creepiest thing
in
there
the
is.
distance, especially. It's
Yeah,
just like
just in the background.
yeah,
and yeah, she just can't. She keeps hearing her singing in the background. Yeah, she has this repressed memory, and yeah, this is a fascinating episode.
Yeah.
It really
this concept's
is.
really cool.
Kind of freaky when she just invited her in for like hot
Yes.
chocolate or whatever.
yeah,
And she keeps like getting things right about,
Yeah,
main character. She's just like,
yeah,
oh, when this happened or when that happened
Yeah.
or that burn on your elbow.
Yes.
It's like,
and
what?
you like your tea this way, or you
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
you know.
And she's so solemn
Yeah.
and just
Exactly.
kind of a little bit of a smart ass.
Yeah.
It's
It's like,
yeah.
excuse me? I'd kick this kid out
Yeah.
already, but
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But she's a teacher. She's like,
Yeah,
gotta
for
be
sure.
good to the kids.
For sure.
Yeah, she's like, I've dealt with these kinds of kids before.
Yeah. She's like, kids say weird things all the time. This is
Yeah,
nothing
this
new.
is normal. This is normal. But it's not normal, Helen.
It's not Helen. Yeah.
Yeah.
how did
Yeah.
you know my name?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I was scared about for this episode was that she would get blamed for this man's death.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that they'd be like, oh man, she's just
Yeah,
a crazy
so-
lady.
Yeah, because in the episode, what happens is the child version of her shows up to
Yeah.
help her jog the memory that she's repressed, that her mother was murdered when she was a child, and she witnessed the murder and knew who the murderer was.
Yeah.
But because she had no recollection of it because of the trauma, the murderer got away,
Yep.
and he's showing back up at her house.
Yeah.
And
To,
he
to remove the final witness.
yeah,
Yep.
to eventually kill her. 'Cause he's like, eventually she's gonna remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she pushes him down the stairs.
Yeah.
And that's
There
the
you go.
episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was pretty funny. This was one that Ariel was in the room when I was watching this one.
Okay.
And she called it super
Yeah.
early on. Both twists actually.
Yeah.
That
was
the little
her.
girl was her,
Yeah.
and that the man there was
Was the
murderer that they
murderer.
were
Yeah.
referencing.
I mean, he was just too creepy.
he was
Yeah.
to
certainly.
not be. The next one we have on our list is The After Hours from season 1, episode 34.
Our favorite.
It is. When Marcia goes into a department store to buy a thimble, she finds out who she really is.
Yes.
And now together, guys.
Come off it, Marcia. You know what you are. I remember when we first watched this together years ago, and we just laughed and laughed about that. That was so
Yes.
funny.
Yeah. Get off your freaking high horse, Marsha.
Come off it, Marcia.
You're a freaking mannequin. Thinking about it, I'm like, going to a department store like a Macy's type
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
For a thimble is such an odd
I
thing.
know.
Yeah.
It's so 1950s, like a golden
Yes.
thimble
Yeah, very
Yes.
specific.
of all things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the episode where she is a mannequin come to life,
Yep.
and she thinks she's a normal person.
Yeah.
And then she goes into the department store, and the other mannequins are like, "Bro, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time for you
Yeah.
to come back."
Yep.
So
It's
the
not
other
your
mannequins
turn.
can walk around.
Exactly. They switch off on who gets to be in the real world.
Yeah.
And
Take turns.
they're like,
Yes.
you've been gone too long. Like, you've taken,
Yeah.
so many other people's.
I think she was just a day over.
Oh, was
but-
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The
But still.
yeah, this is. I mean, mannequins coming to life is a very popular science
Yeah.
fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doctor Who did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually really like the part where she's in the store. Everyone's gone. She got locked in essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's just walking through the empty store with all the mannequins around. And there's that shot from kind of far away of her walking through, and you can see all
Yeah.
the other mannequins. And they all just kind of step off their
Yeah.
thing and start to follow her. And I'm
Slowly.
like, oh, whoa. Because I totally bought that they were mannequins still.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't sure, what was going on. I wasn't
Yeah.
fully, I hadn't figured it out quite yet.
Yeah.
And they all just stepped off the thing, and I was like, oh shit, they're all living mannequins. Because it's like, oh, it's just the elevator guy, or oh, it's just the girl on the
Right.
Yeah.
9th floor that
Yeah.
doesn't exist. It was a really awesome reveal.
It was very
Super
good.
cool.
Yeah.
Very. Sadly, just a week before this episode aired, TV Guide ruined the twist. TV
Damn.
Guide. By publishing a still of Anne Francis with her mannequin double with the caption, Miss Francis plays a mannequin who comes to life in CBS's Twilight Zone.
What?
Wow.
And this is one where you didn't know she was a mannequin till the end. This is not. Yeah.
Even DJ McHale took inspiration from this episode.
He told us
Sure
about
did.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked to him. There have since, and like Robin said, there have since been several other mannequin episodes of shows. And
Mannequins are
things.
scary.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Inherently terrifying.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So the next episode we have is The Howling Man from season 2, episode 5. In this one, a man seeking shelter from a storm stumbles upon a hermitage of brothers who claim to have captured the devil and have him locked up.
Ooh. This one's super trippy.
Yeah.
And one of the only times where the camera movement made me feel a little wobbly, which wasn't fun, but it was still a cool episode because you didn't know who to trust.
Yeah.
Except for main character. Kinda.
A little bit. But like they were portraying him as like a sick, like so sick and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like, is what he's taking in really
Right.
like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of those like seminal Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah.
Where people were like, this was so good. Like, it's one of those ones that really sold people on the show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man.
It's wild stuff. And I actually think the transition
Yeah.
from like when he lets him out, his like normal, quote unquote, normal form as he changes between the shots into the like
was
more
really
and more
good.
devilish as it goes was really good.
Yes. I agree.
Like super old school
Yep.
effect, just like 7 different costumes that he had to change into
Yep.
So
for one
cool.
shot. Really cool.
I could not believe the ending when he just left that woman with
right?
I was like, oh, if I had spent that much time and finally did something
Never,
like got it,
yeah.
I would not know.
Right.
There's no way. Yeah. Like I'd make somebody else do the preparation,
think-
whatever preparations he need. I don't know.
But I think the point is because
That's true. They say at the end. Yeah.
the narration says that there are people on the devil's side.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
true.
There will always be
There
people
will always
seeking
be.
to let him out again.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
So-
the fact that you can catch him, but you can
Right.
never keep him for
Right.
very long.
It's implied. I think it's kind of implied that that woman kind of knew
Yeah.
and was like,
Yeah.
he's gone
Gotcha.
finally. Let's let him out.
Next one is Eye of the Beholder from season 2, episode 6. A young woman is awaiting the results of her surgery to see if the last attempt has succeeded in making her normal. She awaits these results in bandages that cover her entire head until near the end of the episode. And this was one of the highest rated and most famous episodes of the show.
This is the one they show in promos.
Yeah.
If they're like, oh, Twilight Zone marathon. This is like,
It.
yeah. Because this one was so classic, the way it was shot.
Yep.
You know, they have everyone shrouded in shadow
Or facing away.
or facing
Yep.
away the
Yeah.
entire episode. And to have a group of characters that you're paying attention to and you care about and to
Yeah.
never see their face,
Yep.
it's pretty impressive acting. It's
Yeah.
really good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really good directing. They did such a good job with this episode.
And I love the twist. I
Yep.
mean, sometimes you can kind of feel it coming.
Yeah.
Because they're so about like, whoa, my face living normal. And they're like, oh, but if
Yeah.
it doesn't work, you can
Yeah,
go live
there's
here
options.
with
Yeah.
other people like you.
Other people who just look like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the reveal of like one of the most gorgeous
Yes.
women ever.
Yeah.
It's like
She's so
She's-
conventionally attractive.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, you've got to be kidding
Yep.
me.
Yeah.
And she
Yep.
runs away in horror because she's
Yep.
like, oh, I'm hideous.
I'm hideous because I don't have a pig face because they reveal
Yeah.
that everyone else who is working on her has pig faces.
Including their presumably dictator leader.
Yeah.
That's like
Which is
everything has to
kinda
be
what-
the same. Everybody has to be the same.
She was definitely meant to look like Hitler a little bit. Too.
Oh,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, but it's so good.
It is.
Yeah.
I love that everyone is hidden the entire time.
Yeah.
So you never see anyone's face till
Yep.
maybe the last
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's so
That
cool.
cinematography.
It's
It's
so good.
really good.
So good. Right. Nick of Time is next from season 2, episode 7. So there's quite a stretch where a couple of these were
Yeah.
pretty big
Bangers,
hitters. Yeah. A couple, a man and a woman, get stuck in a small town of Ridgeview, Ohio, when a small mystic seer box preys upon their superstitions. The box seemingly predicts the future, and the man, Don Carter, played by William Shatner, becomes obsessed with the box.
Yeah, it gets everything right. Like every time he asks it a question, it has like literally the perfect response.
Kind of response, yeah.
It's just yes or no questions, but it's like perfectly worded to like in like I believe it too. It's like even if you're not superstitious, like this is
a little
this is
on the
too
nose.
on
It's
the
a little
nose.
too much, yeah.
All right, a notable quote from this episode is, "It doesn't matter whether it can foretell the future. What matters is whether you believe more in luck and in fortune than you do in yourself. You can decide your own life. You have a mind, a wonderful mind. Don't destroy it, trying to justify that cheap penny fortune machine to yourself. We can have a wonderful life together if we make it wonderful ourselves. I don't want to know what's going to happen. I want us to make it happen together."
What a great little monologue.
Yep.
I love that.
And it's another kind of ominous ending.
Yeah.
Where they do leave.
Yeah.
But then another couple just like them comes to sit at the same table.
Yeah.
And it's like, quick, ask it. Can we finally leave? Doesn't seem likely. Like these people who totally both of them bought into it and they're stuck.
Yeah, they're stuck there.
Man.
The next episode we have here is The Silence, Season 2, Episode 25.
All right.
Yeah.
A man who talks too much for the likes of one of his club members takes a bet for $500,000 to remain silent for a whole year. He takes the wager only on the word of the man who bet him. He locks himself in a glass case in the basement of the club, but does the man that made the wager even have the money to pay him?
Ooh, this one.
Yeah. Oh, that ending, man.
It's upsetting, isn't it?
So, yeah. So this is the one where, you know, they make the bet, the guy lives in a glass case for a year, and then the closer they get to the bet, the guy just starts to freak out and unravel.
Starts offering him money and...
because
yeah.
I don't know if it was like his lawyer or whoever the guy he was
I think it was
to.
his lawyer. I want to say it was his lawyer.
Somebody who's in charge of his finances is basically like, you're ruined, dude. You don't have this, but you're going to owe it to him.
You're going to owe him $500,000.
Yeah.
And then the guy in the case wins the bet.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And when the guy's like, I just don't have the money.
Yep.
It turns out that the guy in the case had sliced his vocal cords.
Yeah, severed the nerves to his vocal cords.
Turns out he was so desperate for the money.
Yeah.
That he... And knew that he wouldn't be able to do it under normal circumstances. So he severed the nerves to his vocal cords so that he literally couldn't talk anymore.
It's not necessarily gory, but it is gruesome. You know?
Yeah.
It sucks a lot because he did it and then still doesn't get the money.
Still doesn't get the money.
And it's unclear as to whether or not his wife is actually like leaving him or anything. Like, you know, because they talk like the guy that made the bet for the $500,000 was like, your wife's been seen with all these other men, and you know,
you should leave now.
Yeah, I know you've been writing to her, and she hasn't been writing you back.
Yeah.
And then they reveal the fact that he didn't even get the $500,000, but they don't say anything about the wife.
Yeah, I mean, it might have just been a ploy to try to get him to talk.
Next on our list is The Shelter.
Ooh.
Season 3, Episode 3. A friendly neighborhood birthday party turns sour when an announcement is heard on the radio that there is an impending possible nuclear attack coming due to unidentified aircraft flying above. They all turn on one man who is ready with a bomb shelter because everyone else is unprepared for such an occurrence.
Man.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is one of those mob mentality episodes.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I keep telling you, Jerry, you get ready, build a shelter, forget the card parties and the barbecues for maybe a few hours a week. Forget them and make the admission to yourself that the worst was possible. But you didn't want to listen, Jerry. None of you wanted to listen. To build a shelter was to admit the kind of age we lived in, and none of you had the guts to face that. So now you gotta face something far worse, Jerry.
That is such a good monologue.
Yes, it is.
And it really sums up some of the things that people were really scared about at this point in time
Yep.
in American history. And this is, you know, because it's true. It's true. To do something like that, you have to admit, like, this,
Could happen.
to put time
could-
and effort and money into something like that. It's like, okay, you are admitting that you do think that this thing is going to happen.
Yeah, that there's a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, this character had quite a few awesome monologues in this episode. Yeah, because they're at the end when, spoiler, they knock down the door to his bomb shelter, and immediately they're all told that, oh, there's nothing to worry
False
about.
alarm.
The aircraft is identified, not going to be bombed, all is good. They're like, hey, yeah, we'll just have a party to celebrate. We'll get back to normal. And he's like, normal? Like,
What do you mean?
what do you mean normal?
We can't do that.
We can't do that. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I just saw the worst in all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It drove me crazy.
Yeah.
This episode was just
Yep.
kind of infuriating to watch in some ways, but like
Yeah.
scary too because
It is.
It is. Yeah.
This is something that is scary to think about.
Yeah,
Yep,
that
yep.
mob mentality that you said, and also this whole thing of like nationality versus other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or quote unquote the other people,
The
because
odor, yeah.
that one of the neighbors specifically who like leads the charge to break into the shelter because he just is losing his mind. They have one Hispanic friend
Yeah.
in the neighborhood, and he starts calling him out. It's like, it's your fault. It's always the foreigners who, you know.
Yeah, and it's like,
he
what the
literally
heck?
had nothing to do with this, dude.
Yeah.
You are calling, you're finding something to be upset at,
Yep.
and you're just grabbing
Yep.
him because he's different.
Scapegoat.
Yeah.
And then,
Grasping at straws.
yep. And
Yep.
then right after false alarm, no bombs are coming. He's like, you know, I just lost
Yeah.
I just lost my marbles. You can forgive a person for kind of blowing their top, right? And I was like, no,
No.
don't
Yeah.
ever talk to me again or my family.
Yeah, now I know how you really feel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So the one character, yeah, I really liked this line too. It was like, you know, we were spared a bomb tonight, but I don't know that we weren't destroyed anyway.
Yeah. Yes. Next on our list, speaking of mob mentality, the monsters are due on Maple Street. Back to season 1 for a second, episode 22.
Yeah, and not because we put this in the wrong spot. On the
No,
list.
not at all.
Fine.
It's because the mob mentality. We
Yes,
wanted
that's
to
why
keep
we
the
did
mobs
that.
together.
It fits better. We created a mob in a way. When all electrical items suddenly are not working on Maple Street, the citizens decide that there must be an alien among them that is creating such a disturbance. Their paranoia turns them all against each other.
This is, oh my gosh. This, I think, was the first episode I ever saw,
Oh, nice.
or at least it was the first one I was introduced to. First of all, let's talk about this title.
Yeah.
Perfection.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
What
yeah,
a perfect title.
Yeah.
Monsters are due on
Oh,
Maple
yeah.
Street. Oh my God. So when I was a kid, we had these big readers in class, and they had sections of stories that you went through, and I would read the whole thing because I loved the readers. And in it, there was the screenplay for Monster Due on Maple Street. So I read that screenplay as a kid before I watched the show. So that was the first like introduction I had to the
That is so
Twilight Zone.
cool.
And they had pictures from the episode and stuff. And yeah, I mean, this is just such a classic. You talk about a classic episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the one.
This is actually one that kind of I was introduced to the Twilight Zone with. I remember being shown it, I believe, by our very own Robin, who likes to show us things.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And it was like, I get it. I get why the Twilight Zone is this like
Yeah.
Yeah.
phenomenon of sci-fi craziness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the monsters are among us is basically, I mean, that is the thing that they were people were really afraid of at this time.
Yeah.
That's why this is the era of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah.
Because this is when, monsters don't live in layers underground.
Yeah.
In caves. They don't have big sharp teeth and hairy faces.
Yep.
No, the monsters are the neighbors next door. The monsters are here already, and you don't even know yet. And that's what this whole. I mean, this is what horror was really doing at this time, and this was so perfect for that. You talk about like the Red Scare, and you talk about the way people can turn each other.
Yep,
absolutely. And this one is like, you take the previous one we talked about, the shelter, and we mentioned the guy who starts yelling at the foreign family, or the foreign husband, I believe, is just him.
Yeah.
He starts yelling at him about being the different one, and like he's searching for someone to blame.
Yep.
Right? He's looking for a scapegoat. You take that concept and you turn that part into an entire episode, and you get this one, because the whole thing is they're not all ganging up on one family who has a shelter. They are looking for someone to blame. They're looking for a scapegoat, and it makes them turn on everyone because it can't be me, so it has to be one of you. And everyone thinks the same way, so they all blame each other, and it just turns into absolute chaos.
And it shows it was so effective because it showed how dangerous this kind of mentality was. And that was such a bold statement at this time.
When you let the mob go crazy, bad things happen.
And aliens were like,
right.
They were like, so they were like, you know what? We don't have to destroy them.
All we had to do.
They're gonna destroy themselves.
It was amazing, that part, because it was one alien talking to another one who's like the new guy, right? And he's like, you see, we've done, it works every time. It's just like showing how they can do it. It's like, this will be easy taking this planet over.
He's like, Maple Street is the same as all the
every other
ones.
street in America.
Oh, gosh. What an absolute gem of an episode. Next, we have 5 characters in search of an exit. Back to season 3, episode 14. A ballet dancer, a major, a clown, a tramp, and a bagpipe player find themselves at the bottom of a cylindrical enclosure with no way out. The major can't stand being trapped and continues to look for a way out, while the rest try to convince him it's no use.
This episode, I saw this super young. And you know what? It's burned in my brain. I was so affected by this episode as a kid. I'm claustrophobic, and the concept terrified me. And, the ending, the big twist ending, really made me very sad. And I just remember just that being so... Because I was watching it with my sister Rachel, and I remember I didn't understand the ending at first because I was a little kid. They're all dolls. They're all toys in this bin.
Right, because the major specifically has such... He's like convinced that they're real and that there's people waiting outside for them. It's like, we had lives. I don't know why I don't remember, but we must have. There must be people out there waiting for us. We had to have had lives, right? We're all people. But none of them remember anything. Like, I don't even know why I'm a clown. I just am dressed as one. I'm not. There's no circus or anything. It's like this whole thing, and the part that really kind of weirded me out, because at the beginning it's like you believe it. You believe that they're in some kind of like Saw scenario, right? Or they're trapped in here via some other being, and they're just waiting and trying to figure out something to do. And he's like, "Oh, but we're gonna starve to death or die of thirst." And they're like, "Do you feel hungry? Do you feel thirsty? Do you feel anything?" We don't. And he's like, "I guess not, but that's because of the adrenaline. I'm trying to figure it out." And it's like, give it time. And it's like, I'm like, whoa, what is happening?
What is this?
Because I didn't know the twist. Because I haven't seen a lot of these until now. but it's really cool. And it's actually another one that's really well shot.
Yeah.
I love when they have the idea to stack on top of each other.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that they're laying down.
Yeah.
But it's shot
They
at an
still-
angle where it
yeah.
looks like they're stacked. They do a good job
they
of
do a
making
good
it seem
job.
like they're wobbling and
Yes.
stuff.
I mean,
it's really fun.
Yeah, I love the way they do so many of these episodes because they don't have to have super elaborate sets
Yeah.
to create something
Nope.
like a full, complete story like
Yeah.
this. I mean, they're just basically in a weird, dark room. The next episode we're going to talk about is called To Serve Man, Season 3, Episode 24.
Oh boy.
Aliens from a far distant planet come to Earth to share their prosperity and knowledge. However, no one is quite convinced they don't have ulterior motives.
Oh boy, these aliens are weird. Let me tell you what. Because they talk via like telepathy, basically. So they're just
Yeah.
standing there with like vacant faces.
Yes, very vacant.
But you can hear them with like normal voices. And I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah.
So,
It reminds me of the Ood.
oh yeah.
From
Yeah.
Doctor Who,
yeah.
because they hold the ball and like they don't move their mouths, but
Yeah.
they talk. But also because the Ood like live to serve.
Yeah. They come and are like, oh, here's how to make your soil grow 10 times the food. And here's
Yep.
Yeah.
the cure
How
for
to-
every disease. Here's
Yeah.
force fields so that you could stop
Yep.
warring. You know, you can.
Please stop worrying.
You
Yeah,
can. You can.
we need more of you.
Yeah, you can. You can disband all your armies so that you're defenseless.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because everyone believes it. They seem so
Yep.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't read their language, but they have these people the alien leaves a book
Yep.
that is written in their weird language, and they get the people in the US military who would like crack codes, right? To
Yeah.
try to decipher it, and they just are slowly getting it. And then a woman gets the title of the book on the front. It says To Serve Man.
Yeah.
And they were like, boom, if that doesn't mean they're here to help us,
Help.
then nothing does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, oopsie
Oh.
daisy.
It's so clever.
It
It's
is.
so funny
So
to
clever.
serve, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a cookbook.
And then I guess, spoilers, I guess.
Freshly
Yeah.
ground plankton. Sorry.
The part that I thought was weird that kind of like got me into the wait a second. Because,
Yeah.
you know, I was kind of along with it where it's like, I guess they're here to, what's going to be the twist?
Yeah.
They're here to help, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when they were like, oh, we're taking groups of people to our planet
Yeah.
for like cool vacations or whatever. I'm like, wait a second. If Earth has been made to be this paradise,
Yeah.
why are you now going to the other planet?
Yeah.
Why do you need to go anywhere? Everything's perfect here now.
Yeah.
They
Right.
fixed
Yep.
Earth. Why do
Yep.
you want to leave?
Yep.
So I thought that was super weird.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's like, well, everyone's getting on the ship because we demand it.
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much.
We're
Yep.
hungry.
Yep.
The next episode is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Season 5, Episode 3.
Man.
A man that has recently been released from a facility for a nervous breakdown is convinced there is a monster outside the plane.
Yeah.
This episode was shot in an empty water tank, and the plane was about 30 feet off the ground.
Nice.
Yeah. William Shatner makes another appearance. He and Ed Burns ended up playing a prank on director Richard Donner by having a fake fight on one of the wings and throwing a dummy that was the size of Shatner down to the ground.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd
Could
be
you imagine?
scary.
Jeez, Richard Donner.
Richard Donner.
Oh, and then this episode was written by Richard Matheson, who
Aha.
was one of the big sci-fi writers that Rod
Yes.
Serling brought in
Yeah.
and wrote a lot of the episodes of the show.
It's such a good one. It's
Yeah.
like, this one doesn't necessarily have a weird, like,
No.
commentary on humanity or anything
No.
like that. It's just a kind of spooky
It's just kind of weird.
creature,
Yeah.
weird.
Yes.
You're like,
thing.
is he really seeing it? Is he not? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yep.
And that, it is one of the most classic, most parodied
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
episodes of the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my god, like this is one of those. Like when you see clips of the
Yeah.
show, everyone
Mm-hmm.
shows the clip
Yeah.
of him in the plane freaking out.
I guess he wins.
Yeah.
because he survived. He shot the thing.
Yep.
Yep.
Which really quickly they call it gremlin because of the whole like gremlins in the
Gremlins and
Air
aircraft.
Force.
Yeah.
And then they pull back to show the plane damaged.
Yeah.
And the narrator says something to the effect of like, you know, even though he seems crazy, it's still proven right because they'll find the damage on the plane here and start to question whether or not he was crazy.
Whether or not he was crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
The next episode we're going to talk about is Living Doll, Season 5, Episode 6. A stepfather is frustrated when his new wife and stepdaughter bring home a doll from the store. The Talkie Tina doll continues to upset him as it begins to tell him things only when he is in the room, like, I don't think I like you, and I'm beginning to hate you.
Oh my God.
Man.
We discussed this episode in our June 4A case.
Yes, we did.
Oh my gosh. So, Chatty Cathy was a doll that, you know, and it's actually hilarious. And we talked about this before.
Yes.
June Foray voices Talkie Tina.
Yep.
She was like, you know, the voice actor of the time.
Yep.
And they also had her do the voice for Chatty Cathy.
Like,
Yeah.
So
if you watched this episode and then bought
and
a
also
Chatty
had a
Cathy,
Chatty Cathy.
you'd
you
be
will
terrified.
Sufficiently
Yes.
be terrified, yeah.
Yes, and Chatty
You-
Cathy,
yeah.
Chatty Cathy, if you're unfamiliar, was also the similar kind of doll, had a drawstring, pre-programmed phrases.
Yep. Yep.
You know.
The eyes would open and
mean-
close when you lay it down and stick
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
They wanted people to treat the doll right.
It was all a
Yes.
ploy.
Yeah.
This is where I think the series, you know, we talk about how it's a sci-fi series, but this is one of those moments where this is
Yeah.
truly bending into the horror genre.
Yeah.
This is like a horror episode of the Twilight Zone for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
And why I feel like it's okay that we did this during Frightening February.
Yes.
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 Exactly.
The show is scary, and this is
It
one of
is.
those times when this show
Yeah.
is pretty scary.
And actually, I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of people's favorite episodes are also considered the scariest
Yeah.
episodes.
Yeah.
Because, and whether or not it's like straight up horror like Talkie Tina,
Yeah.
or like really mess with your mind, humanity's the monster kind of horror like
Yeah.
Monsters Do on Maple Street.
Right.
So, but both of them are considered like top episodes.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't think it's
No, not
a coincidence.
No, episodes that really drew you in and made you think and just kind of had you on the edge of your seat. And this episode was so good
Yeah.
because it really showed you how, it really just shows you now how you don't really need a lot of special effects and,
Nope.
you know, for something to be scary. You know, the idea is that, like, you know, he throws the doll away,
Yeah.
walks back into the room, there's the doll. That's
Yep.
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will always be scary.
Oh,
There is
yeah.
nothing about that. That will
Nope.
never not be terrifying.
Exactly.
You know, and everything he does to this doll, puts it in the trash can, whatever else.
He can't destroy. Like, he tries to saw its head off. And
Yes.
He can't. Literally, it literally
doesn't
doesn't
work.
even do a scratch on it.
Yes. The next one is called You Drive, Season 5, Episode 15. After Oliver Pope is involved in a hit and run, his car will not let him forget what happened. Stephen King was a fan of the show, and this episode very well may have been the inspiration for his novel, Christine.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
It's
I mean, it had
seems
to,
like
It
it.
absolutely had to be. Absolutely. I literally,
yeah.
I didn't even know. I happened to watch Christine, and then I watched this episode, not even knowing about the connection, and I was like, oh, okay.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one is another one that's just kind of like crazy
Yes.
sci-fi. Whoa.
Yeah.
This is one of
Like,
those that the moment you hear the car honk the first time,
Yeah.
you're like, oh no. Like, because already you feel super uneasy. He hits the child,
Yeah.
Yeah.
flees the scene.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
do not like him, and you are
Nope.
not supposed to.
Yeah.
Nope.
And, you know, it's very telltale heart.
Yeah.
You know, you can see,
Yep.
you know, how the guilt is going to just, tear him apart.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because the
Yep.
car keeps reminding him.
Yes.
Yep.
The car, you know, the horn going off in the middle of the night, the car breaking down at the same intersection the next day.
The radio blaring in the middle of the night as well.
yeah.
Yep.
And his coworker ends up getting blamed for it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And the car was like, nah.
No way, dude. No way.
Yeah.
His wife takes his car to the shop,
Mm-hmm.
and the car drives itself back. But you don't see that happen.
Yeah.
Nope.
You just get a call from the mechanic they lost the car, and then you hear it honking in the garage.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh my god.
Because then he accuses his wife of like bringing the car back. And
Yeah,
she's
what
like,
do you mean you left it at the shop? It's right here.
Yeah.
And then finally, the big, beautiful reveal when he wants to walk to work or take
Yeah.
the bus.
Yep.
The car's like, and it follows him with no
Yep.
driver. And
Yes.
it's like, mwah, beautiful.
Beautiful.
I love when
Yes.
old TV shows and movies do that because I want to know how.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of contraption in there where there's a person driving? Did they remote control it somehow?
I think this is the last one we're going to talk
Yeah,
about.
Sure
the
is.
last one.
The Masks, Season 5, Episode 25. During Mardi Gras, a dying man requests that his loved ones wear masks until midnight to gain his inheritance after his death.
Sounds pretty simple, right?
Sounds
Yeah.
pretty run-of-the-mill, normal thing to
you
do.
wear masks for Mardi Gras
Yeah.
anyway. You
Yeah.
know, just
That's right.
put
that's
on
right.
a mask.
Mhm.
Oh, man.
These masks, however,
Yeah.
have some odd meaning to them.
Yeah.
Right. They're like caricatures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little hidden agenda
He-
there.
Yeah.
In this old man is so clever,
Yes.
where he says you're supposed to pick the mask that is opposite of you in real life.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you're such a nice and noble, kind man. Here's the one that's for greed and
Malice
and
and
malice.
avarice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the daughter is like, oh, you're so beautiful and loving, and you love everyone else. You couldn't care less of what you look like. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
you're
Here's
so
the one about
selfless.
vanity and
Yeah.
and it's like it's perfect. And then gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then on top of that, being like, I know why you're here. Like, and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not going to get a scent of it until you wear these masks until
Yep.
midnight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're all like, no, no. And then, of course, they put them on.
Of course they do, because they want the money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. As he knew they would.
And then
Yeah.
this is the episode that Tim Burton said
Yes.
inspired him.
Oh,
For
that's right.
Lock, Shock, and Barrel.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Oh, that's
Those
right.
character designs.
That's
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
because when they take their masks off, their faces are still
the same.
Pretty
Still,
much the
yeah.
same.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Smart.
Dude,
so
Twilight Zone.
that's how I was both of us were introduced to this episode is because after we heard that we were like, well, now we have to
have
see
to
what the
watch
masks is.
Yeah.
It was man, so
There
good.
we go.
All right. So when we say that the Twilight Zone is one of the most influential TV dramas of all time, we really mean it. It became a cultural phenomenon, introducing audiences all over the country to the science fiction genre. It carried on the tradition of anthology storytelling and inspired generations of storytellers.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that anthologies were a little more popular.
I wish that too.
Yeah.
I really like
Not,
that.
not that I want to replace overarching stories entirely,
No, but
but need a
I like
balance, you know?
anthologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd rather have something like an anthology go on forever and ever
Yeah.
than like
You
the
can-
Then you don't
shows
have
that
to
we
worry
have
about
lately.
the actors aging out.
Exactly.
You can just watch it in any
Yeah,
order you
exactly.
want. It doesn't matter.
Yes. Shows like Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt, Are You Afraid of the Dark, and Black Mirror were also inspired by the show.
I mean, yeah.
Oh man,
absolutely.
I think Black Mirror is like that's like today's
Yeah.
Twilight Zone. It
Yeah.
is so inspired by
Yeah.
Twilight
Oh,
Zone.
yeah. Countless TV shows and films have referenced the show, with Futurama even having its own version called The Scary
The
Door.
Scary Door. and the parody of Rod Serling.
Yes.
The narration and everything. It's
Yep.
wonderful.
There's actually an episode where it's a love potion episode where this guy is in love with this woman and he buys a love potion and she
Oh my
becomes obsessed with
gosh.
him. And her name is Leela.
Ah,
And then the whole time I was thinking about that.
Oh
Wasn't
my
nice.
I?
gosh.
This is a Scary Door episode.
It's a Scary Door. Yeah. Since the show ended in the mid-1960s, there have been several reboots. In 1983, nearly 20 years after the original show ended, Twilight Zone the movie hit theaters. It featured 4 segments, directed by John Landis, Joe Dante, George Miller, and Steven Spielberg. Each story was a remake of an original episode, except for the one directed by John Landis. The film was narrated by Burgess Meredith, a famed TV actor that appeared in the original show, like we talked before. After the 1980s film, the series was rebooted from 1985 to 1989. Like the original, this version attracted a lot of top writing and directing talent from the era. Wes Craven and George R.R. Martin were among the contributors to the show.
Wow.
George R.R. Martin wrote 5 episodes of The Twilight Zone.
That's kind of cool.
Huh.
Yeah.
There were 2 more reboots, one in 2002 that lasted 1 season, and the most recent one in 2019. The 2019 reboot was 2 seasons long and narrated by director/comedian Jordan Peele. Peele also co-created the remake with Simon Kinberg and Marco Ramirez.
And they said they just wanted to end it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like canceled. They just
That's
were done.
good. Yeah. They had the stories they wanted to tell, and they told them.
And they told
That's
them,
good.
and that's that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with ending your show when you want to.
That's good.
No, there's nothing wrong
Actually,
with that.
yeah, there is nothing
There is
wrong
nothing
with that.
wrong with just ending your show when the time comes.
Yeah. You hear that, people?
You don't have to drag things out.
You don't have
Yeah,
to.
no. The last interview Rod Serling ever did was for reporter Linda Brevell, who asked him what he wanted people to say about him in 100 years. He said, "I don't care that they're not able to quote any single line that I've written, but just that they can say, 'Oh, he was a writer.' That's sufficiently an honored position for me."
Aw,
Yeah.
nice.
That's certainly true.
Yeah.
He certainly was a writer.
Yeah.
A great one at
Very
that.
good.
And a great friggin' narrator, too.
He was very good narrating.
I would have loved to have had him do some like audiobooks or something.
Yeah.
Just more of his voice.
Oh,
And
that would be cool.
read some kind of
Yeah.
read some sci-fi spooky books.
Yep, but we
would love that.
But we do not want the AI version.
No,
That's
we
true.
repeat,
we
no AI.
that was not an invitation
Yeah, please
Certainly
no.
not.
for AI. Oh, is there any other thoughts on the Twilight Zone before we wrap this up?
Oh man,
It's such a cool show. I don't think there's really anything quite like it. There are things, like we said, very much inspired by it.
Yeah.
And kind of similar in that way, like a Black Mirror. But Black Mirror deals with like modern technology, things like that. Nothing quite hitting on the problems with humanity
Yeah.
like the Twilight Zone does. And it's super fun just to go back to. I do not care in the slightest that it's old and black and white.
Yeah.
no.
In fact, it's part of its charm to me, watching it all in black and white and stuff like that. So I will probably go and just blitz through all of them to make sure I clean up any that I haven't seen.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know about those season 4 episodes that are
Yeah.
an hour long.
yeah, I'll give them a shot.
It is interesting to see, like, watching season 1 to season 2 and to, season 3 and then 5. No, but like I especially noticed in the first season how Rod Serling would do the introductions and stuff, but you wouldn't see his face. But then by season 2, he was like in the Twilight Zone. Like he would appear. They would like show the characters and then they would kind of pan over and he'd be in another room there and he'd be like this,
Actually,
I love that they
Him being in the
changed it to
sets.
that.
Him being in the sets really made it legitimized the story.
Yeah.
Somehow. It just made it feel even more.
yeah, it's like he's our ghost of Christmas present.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's taking us to he's showing us this as it's happening right now in front of us.
Yeah.
You know, because the audience and him are standing there kind of off to the side where nobody can see him.
Yep.
And watching this go down.
Yeah.
I really like how they like cold open and then he just pops in and it's like, yes, this is all happening. We're in the Twilight Zone. Like, so good.
Love it. So, yep.
The Twilight Zone is a show that has such staying power, it's hard to believe it was created 65 years ago. In the great tradition of horror and science fiction, it found a way to express the anxieties of the people watching, all while inspiring generations of creatives to continue its mission. Although the series may appear dated in some ways, with its black and white imagery and 1960s clothing, it's largely timeless. Instead of special effects, the show often relied on its writing to pull the audience in. Sure, there are creatures from outer space and robots, but the fear lies in the mind of the viewer, and the show just knew how to draw it out. So if you're ever looking to get lost in a good story, or to be reminded of the terrors that live within, we suggest you take your next vacation in the Twilight Zone. All right. And I guess that's a case closed. Oh, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our patrons, John, JD, Anthony, Shelley, Bob, and Jacob. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you for everything, for sticking with us.
Thank you for listening to our first episode of the season, final season premiere.
Yeah.
And we'll be here for a little bit longer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
To anyone who's listened and who will listen this last season.
Yes.
See ya.
Bye.
Do, 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 do.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.